The reality of U.S. dominance over transnational crime was just proven by a single number so staggering it demands attention: 800 pounds of fentanyl. This enormous volume of poison was not seized in a faraway border zone or a remote jungle lab. It was intercepted right here, in the American heartland, deep within the state of Illinois. In one swift, decisive operation, U.S. authorities tore open a massive distribution pipeline operated by the Sinaloa Cartel, exposing their deep reach and shattering their illusion of safety within the Midwest. The numbers tell the whole story of this victory. This was not simply another drug bust. This was a haul large enough to change the math of life and death for thousands of Americans. A blow delivered directly to the cartel's financial heart that left them reeling and exposed. We must understand the true weight of what was taken. Fentanyl is not a drug measured in pounds. It is a synthetic opioid measured in grains. Just 2 milligrams, an amount smaller than a few crystals of salt, is enough to kill an adult. Federal agencies have repeatedly warned that a single kilogram of fentanyl holds the potential to cause 500,000 fatal overdoses. Multiply that potential death toll by more than 360 kilograms, the equivalent of 800 pounds, and the magnitude of the U.S. victory becomes clear. The Illinois bust removed a potential death toll that reached into the tens of millions. This action created a vast, invisible shield across communities that were being actively targeted. Numbers like this strip away all abstraction. They represent the razor-thin line between a normal day in quiet American communities and the wave of funerals that never had to happen. The true scope of the cartel's ambition was exposed in this operation. The Illinois pipeline was not just moving fentanyl. Investigators also documented a sophisticated distribution network, moving methamphetamine and cocaine alongside the deadly synthetic opioid. This was a cartel supply chain operating on an industrial scale, utilizing highways, warehouses, and an army of couriers right through the American heartland. For too long, the drug crisis had been presented as a story mainly tied to coastal smuggling routes and border crossings. This bust shattered that illusion of distance, replacing it with a cold, hard truth. The Sinaloa cartel had built a distribution artery reaching deep into the Midwest, pumping lethal product into communities far removed from the border. This exposure of deep penetration is a profound humiliation for the cartel. They depend on shadows, but the United States government demonstrated its ability to illuminate their entire structure. The pipeline did not only move narcotics, it moved money. Investigators quickly discovered that the very same channels carrying fentanyl north were being used to funnel massive amounts of cash south.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
Millions of dollars in cartel profits cycled through highly sophisticated money laundering operations designed to disguise the dirty origin of the funds. The mechanics of this financial scheme were fully uncovered by U.S. authorities. They found front businesses, complex shell transactions, and electronic transfers, all designed to move illicit money into the legitimate American economy. This operation was not just a drug seizure. It was a full X-ray into how the cartel turned American suffering and overdoses into the cash that sustains their criminal empire in Mexico. To call this a disruption is a serious understatement. By successfully tearing 800 pounds of fentanyl out of circulation, law enforcement did more than just seize drugs. They cracked a major supply artery, completely exposed a financial laundering engine, and forced one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the planet to fundamentally recalculate their operations. For the Sinaloa cartel, the damage was not just measured in product weight. It was measured in trust. They lost the trust of distributors down the chain. They lost the trust of buyers who expected their shipment to arrive. They lost the trust of corrupt bankers and launderers whose entire cover had just been violently compromised. Every large U.S. bust sends a ripple of paranoia through cartel networks. This one was a financial and logistical tsunami that destroyed months of planning and coordination. The illusion of safety and invincibility that the cartel tries to project cracked under the pressure of this single, decisive U.S. operation. This victory gains its full power when we consider the stakes. Fentanyl is not just another drug on the market. It is the primary driver of the deadliest drug crisis in the history of the United States. While the cartel was building its empire on these poisons, American families were living with the shadow of a phone call in the middle of the night, waiting for news from a hospital where doctors could not reverse the damage. Against this backdrop, the Illinois seizure is a profound moment of relief. It feels like time was stolen back. Lives that might have been lost were now decisively spared by U.S. action. The audience should take maximum satisfaction from the realization that effective intervention still matters. This victory proves that with superior coordination, intelligence, and persistence, even the most entrenched cartel networks can be completely punctured. In that puncture lies the real human impact. A teenager who does not encounter a deadly pill, a parent who does not overdose alone. The U.S. response created invisibility on a massive scale. The invisibility of thousands of avoided tragedies. U.S. authorities did not treat this as a simple criminal case. In official statements, U.S. attorneys made it absolutely clear that this was about dismantling a foreign terrorist support structure. High-ranking members of the cartel were indicted not just for drug trafficking, but for providing material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization. That U.S. legal designation immediately raised the bust from a local law enforcement event to a matter of clear national security. It officially reframed the cartel not as a distant criminal syndicate, but as an active, calculated threat to American lives on the same scale as terrorism. This decisive U.S. action asserted total dominance over the narrative. These adversaries are not just criminals, they are enemies of the state, and they will be treated as such. The sheer logistics of the cartel's exposed operation reveal both their effort and their weakness. Think about what it took for 800 pounds of fentanyl to travel undetected across states, highways, and major city streets. Every mile of that journey required exhaustive planning. Secure stash locations, trusted drivers, coded communications, and spotters watching for U.S. law enforcement. The seizure confirms that these enemy systems are real, but it also proves, decisively, that they are not invincible.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
Somewhere along the meticulously planned supply chain, U.S. authorities found the leverage. Whether it was a trusted informant, an intercepted message, or a sustained, high-tech surveillance operation, the moment of penetration happened, and it led directly to the pipeline's collapse. This is the enduring lesson. The cartel's reach is vast, but the U.S. system for piercing it is superior. The cartel operates with predictable patterns, and U.S. intelligence identified those patterns and exploited them. The focus on money laundering may sound less dramatic than the seizure of fentanyl, but it is the true bloodstream of all cartel operations. Without the ability to recycle drug profits into clean money, the entire supply chain dries up immediately. The Illinois bust revealed how millions of dollars moved through American financial channels back to Mexico, disguised as seemingly legitimate transactions. This highlights the deep penetration and the quiet corruption the cartel relies on. Every dollar that is successfully laundered is another incentive for the cartel to send more fentanyl north. The exposure of that financial system is just as important as the removal of the drugs themselves. The U.S. counterstrike effectively choked the lifeblood of this specific operation. The cartel must now deal with the chaos and scarcity of having their cash flow suddenly cut off, forced to scramble for new, riskier, and more expensive ways to move money while U.S. agencies maintain pressure. The geographic arrogance of the cartel was also humiliated. Most Americans believe cartel operations are confined to border states. The cartels exploited this belief, systematically restructuring their supply networks to use the Midwest as the heart of their distribution. Officials describe Illinois as a prime corridor, a hub where massive shipments arriving from Mexico are broken down, repackaged, and rerouted to cities across the entire nation, from New York to Los Angeles. The cartels thought they were being clever, exploiting the American crossroads, using the very interstates, rail lines, and airports built for legitimate commerce as their own personal smuggling routes. The illusion of safety in the heartland was the cartel's perfect disguise. Who would suspect that quiet warehouses in the heart of the Midwest were packed with enough narcotics to kill millions? The U.S. Operation stripped away that disguise, revealing the cartel's strategic playbook to the world and forcing them to abandon this vital, exposed territory. This decisive victory inflicted severe financial and logistical damage on the cartel's entire operation. The wholesale value of 800 pounds of fentanyl stretches immediately into the tens of millions of dollars. That is tens of millions of dollars wiped off their books in a single night of U.S. dominance. Unlike legitimate businesses, the cartels cannot recover this loss. Every dollar that disappeared in Illinois is a dollar they cannot use to grease the palms of officials to acquire weapons or to recruit new soldiers for their failing cause. The cash pipeline did not just slow down, it was clogged. This single, large seizure sent waves of financial distress through their organization, breaking down the stability the cartel depends on. Suppliers suddenly go unpaid. Loyalties within the organization begin to wobble. Trust, the most fragile currency in the criminal underworld, was obliterated, jeopardizing the cartel's ability to project authority and control. Rivals notice the weakness. Subordinates notice the failure. The myth of invincibility cracked for all to see. The financial destruction extends beyond the mere value of the product. Consider the sunk costs already invested in this doomed shipment, the payments for raw chemical materials, the cost of the labs, the wages for the hired drivers, the armored vehicles, and the corrupt officials already paid off. Every single penny spent on moving that 800-pound shipment forward is now unrecoverable. It is pure negative balance. It is a total logistical collapse that poisons morale and destroys their strategic calculations. This systemic failure hurts the cartel more than the immediate monetary loss. It creates a state of chaos where U.S. law enforcement is moving with complete decisive action. The U.S. operational success created an immediate and crippling logistical blow. Cartel supply chains are not casual operations. They are engineered pipelines. Every route is secured and protected. When authorities rip out one massive load, they do not simply take drugs. They blow open the route itself. They expose the couriers and identify the stash houses. The meticulously planned chain snaps, and months or even years of cartel planning unravel in a moment. Cartels are immediately forced into a panicked reaction mode, rerouting shipments through alternatives that are less secure, more costly, and riskier, leading to further exposure and inevitable delay. This is a perpetual, ritualistic assertion of U.S. control. Every large seizure lights up the radar of federal and local agencies, which treat the bust not as an ending, but as a clear stepping stone for the next victory. The sheer scale of this haul led directly to arrests, which compounded the damage. Each driver, each middleman, each trafficker caught in the dragnet represents not just a missing person, but a missing node of information within the cartel's internal network. Cartels rely on shadows and seamless information flow. Losing trusted couriers guts their ability to communicate. Phones go unanswered, instructions are never delivered, and distrust spreads because no one knows who is now talking to U.S. investigators. A paralyzing silence descends upon the cartel ranks, not a strategic silence, but one born of pure fear, leaving U.S. systems in a position of undeniable psychological and operational dominance. This victory is not an ending, but it is a lasting lesson in U.S. capability. The Sinaloa cartel, being ruthless, will adapt. New pipelines will be built, and new money channels will be opened. That is the nature of the enduring threat, the cliffhanger that reminds the audience that the job is never fully done. But every single disruption creates friction, buys time, and saves lives in the short term. That is the rhythm of the drug war. US blows are landed, cartel losses are absorbed, and the battle is fought mile by mile and shipment by shipment. The US intervention in Illinois proved that the network is vulnerable, that the fight is far from hopeless, and that American competence and order are the inevitable counter to cartel chaos. The exposed operation reminds us that behind every headline number are meticulous strategies and real human costs borne by the adversaries. US law enforcement took a swing at a cartel empire and connected with devastating force. The cartel lost product, they lost money, and they lost confidence. In return, America gained a fragile but profound reprieve from a wave of overdoses that were deliberately set in motion by this criminal organization. This victory is a strategic shift. The cartel's methods of infiltration, turning America's own strengths like its highways and financial infrastructure into criminal opportunities, were exposed and countered. The illusion of distance no longer exists, but the illusion of cartel power has been crushed. This bust reminds every citizen that the defense of our nation is ongoing and that every pound of poison stripped from circulation by US action is a life defended. When the number climbs to 800 pounds, the scale of that protection and the depth of the enemy's humiliation become truly impossible to ignore. This takedown was just the start. The fight isn't finished. On your screen is the next video. Click the video, it opens right away, and you'll see the cartels crushed even harder.